Hello students, myself Dr. Jyoti C.K., Assistant Professor, Department of Physics. Title of the paper, Optical Instruments, Laser and Electrodynamics. In an optical instrument, we are studying about these cardinal points. What do you mean by the cardinal points? So before starting directly to the cardinal points, I want to give some of the information about these cardinal points. Who investigated this? In 1841, Gauss is the name of the scientist. He showed that any number of coaxial lenses can be treated as a single unit. But it is not necessary that a single surface of the lens should be separately treated. Here, the lens maker's formula can be applied here, where the distance are to be measured from two hypothetical parallel planes fixed with reference to the refracting system. Now, the points of the intersection of these planes with the axis, that we call it as a Gauss points or else principal points. The another name for this Gauss point is nothing but a cardinal points here. The Gauss is a scientist. He has investigated this cardinal points here. So another name for the cardinal point, we can call it as a Gauss point. Another name for the Gauss point is a principal points here. So let us consider the system. System means what here? The system can be the lens or the mirror or both the cases. In this will forms an image of an object. So totally we are having 6 cardinal points here. We are having the 6 cardinal points. So the cardinal points is nothing but the planes passing through these points and are perpendicular to the principal axis, that we call it as a cardinal points here. Planes means what here? The planes which is passing through these points and perpendicular to the principal axis, that we call it as a cardinal planes. Cardinal points, this is the cardinal planes. Cardinal points where you are having a 6 points will be there. 6 points. What are those 6 points? In that, 2 principal points, 2 focal points, 2 nodal points. Totally how many points we have got? 6 points we have got here. So what is that 6 points? 2 principal points, 2 focal points and the 2 nodal points. So together we call it as these 3 call it as cardinal points here. And the plane which is passing through these points and perpendicular to the principal axis, we call that one as cardinal planes. Cardinal points like a principal points. Repeating again here, cardinal points are the principal points, focal points, nodal points. The planes means like a principal plane, focal plane, nodal planes. All together will form cardinal planes. Now we will try to know one by one about these points and the plane. I will show here in the figure so that you can understand it very easily. So let us consider here now principal points. We are now discussing about the principal point here. So this is again the convex lens. This is an object where it forms an image. Okay, student? Principal points means what here? The pair of the conjugate points. Pair of the conjugate points means here in the figure H1 and H2. H1 and H2. On H1 and H2, where it is lying? They are lying on the principal axis. This is the principal axis, for which a linear transverse magnification is a positive and the unit. Means a unity. It's a 1. That we call it as a principal point. So here now, transverse magnification means that is the ratio of image length. Image length. This one is an object and this one is an image. the ratio of image length to the object length that is measured in the plane, which is measured in the plane that are perpendicular to the optical axis, that we call it as a transverse magnification. And the transverse magnification is going to become a positive will be there, and it's a 1 will be there. So that we call it as a principal point. So in this figure, what are the principal points? H1 and H2 are the principal points here. So okay, so now we learnt about the principal points here. Length means what here? The distance of the first focal point from the first principal point. Where is that first focal point? Here F1 is the first focal point, and the first principal point, which one is the first principal point? H1 is a first principal point. So the distance from F1 to H1, this we call it as a first focal length. Okay student. So now similarly there is a second focal length. Where is that? That is the distance of the second focal point. The F2 is a second focal point from the second principal point, that is an H2. From this one, from this H2 to F2, we are getting as a second focal length here. So here repeating again here, H1 and H2 are the principal points. H1 is the first principal point, H2 is the second principal point. F1 is a first focal point, F2 is a second focal point. The distance from F1 to H1 is known as a first focal length. From H2 to F2, it is known as a second focal length. Okay, so now we learnt about these principal points and what are the focal length. That is the first focal length and the second focal length here. Suppose now let us consider the medium on the two sides of these lenses. On the two sides of these lenses having the same radius of a curvature of the two surface is the same. Let us consider a medium where the lens whose two side is the same here. Same means what here? The radius of curvature is a same on both the surfaces. Means what happens here now? The first focal length is equivalent to the second focal length. Okay. Now we will try to know what is a plane here. As I told, cardinal points and cardinal plane. Cardinal points is nothing but here the previous session I have explained there, cardinal points and a cardinal planes. So now in the same way there is a principal point, along with this there is a principal plane will be there. So now we try to know what is the principal plane here. So here again let us consider the same figure, continuing with the first figure. First and the second principal plane. Another name for this principal plane is the unit plane here. So in this figure let us consider the plane P and Q. This dashed line are the planes P and Q, and these planes are perpendicular to the principal axis. These planes P and Q are perpendicular to the principal axis, and these planes are passing through the points. Which points? Principal points H1 and H2. So this we call it as a first principal plane. This P, this plane is a first principal plane, and this from Q dash to this one we call it as a second principal plane here. So till now we learnt about this principal point and the principal plane. So next we will move to the focal point here. Okay student. Again with the same figure, now we will try to know what are the focal point here. Already have explained there what is a focal point. So anyhow let us consider the points here, F1 and F2. This one F1 and F2. So this is the first and the second focal point. Okay, first and the second focal point. So a pair of the point lying on the principal axis conjugate to the points at the infinite, we call that one as a focal point. Okay. Let us consider the ray of light here. The ray of light is incidented on the lenses in such a way that in a direction parallel to the principal axis on this object side. This is an object. This one is an image here. So now the ray of light is incidented. The ray of light, what you are doing now? The ray of light you are incidenting on lenses in a direction parallel to the principal axis on the object side is bent on a emergence in a such a way that here when the ray of light is an incidented which is a parallel to the principal axis and it is going to bend on the emergent side such a way that it passes through the point F2 here at this point F2 on the axis on the image side. So this one is an image side, this one is an object side here. Okay. Similarly, the ray of light passing through the F1, this one, the ray of light passing through the point F1 on the axis on this object side is rendered parallel after emergence through the lenses. Okay, this is the parallel. Here also you are getting the parallel here after emerging through the lenses. So now it is the point on the principal axis of the lens such that the ray of light passing through it is rendered parallel to the principal axis after refraction. That we call it as a first focal point. This one is a first focal point and this one is a second focal point here. Okay. In another way what we can define here, it is the point on the principal axis. This is the point on the principal axis of the lens such that the ray of light passing through it is a parallel to the principal axis after the refraction. That we call it as a first focal point and the second focal point. Okay. Now what do you mean by this focal plane here? Now we learnt about the focal point. Now we will try to know what is a focal plane here. So now the plane which is perpendicular to the principal axis, the plane which will be perpendicular to the principal axis and it is passing through the points F1 and F2, that we call it as a first and the second focal plane. Okay. So now we learnt about the principal point, focal point, principal plane and the focal plane. So now we will move to the third one. The nodal points N1 and N2 are the pair of the conjugate points. In this figure, N1 and N2 are the pair of the conjugate points having the unit positive angular magnification. If the ray of light is directed towards the first nodal point, that is you are incidenting the ray of light towards the first nodal point, the ray is going to emerges from the second nodal point, that is an N2. And this, how it is this? N1 and N2, they are a parallel to it. The N1 you are incidenting here, the output you are getting here, they are a parallel. Okay. So now in this nodal point, what I have written here? A pair of the conjugate points having the unit positive angular magnification. Angular magnification is means what here? It is the ratio of the tangent of the angle subtended by an object and its image when it is measured from the given point in an instrument, as we see in the magnifiers and in binoculars. We can see that is an angular magnification. Okay. This is about the nodal points. In the same way, we are having the nodal planes here. The plane which is passing here, the plane which is passing through the first and the second nodal plane, and it is a perpendicular to the principal axis of the system. These are the planes that we call it as a first and the second nodal plane. So till now we learnt about these focal point and nodal points and the principal point. So next class we will continue with another topic about the focal length of the lenses separated by the finite distance. In that we will study about the principal point and the power of lens. Okay student, thank you.